Good Tuesday morning to everyone. I'm Jenna Wolfe. This is First Things First. Nick Wright, Brandon Marshall, Kevin Wilds with us. And as we enter Week 11 in the NFL, we are starting out with football, but with gigantic NBA news. We actually have a lot of it sprinkled into the show, and we'll get you some football. But let's start with the bombshell report that broke last night, gentlemen. James Harden turning down a 2-year, $103 million deal from the Houston Rockets, reportedly making his message clear. He wants out, and he'd like to go to Brooklyn. Wilds, I'm just going to say it again. Houston, you've got a problem. The Rockets and Nets have reportedly been in contact, but so far to no avail. So, Nick, I'll start with you. My expressions aside, are you surprised Harden reportedly said no to becoming the first $15 million a year player?
No, because at this point, money, it's not that it's meaningless to James Harden, but it's close to it. Some figures for you. $200 million. That's how much guaranteed money James Harden has generated off the court, thanks to Adidas. $210 million. That's how much guaranteed money James Harden has already earned on the court. And $140 million, that's how much guaranteed money James Harden has left on his current contract. Add all those figures up, and you get well over $500 million. So no, agreeing to pick up his player option and then tack 2 more years on the back end of a deal for a team that is no longer stewarded by Daryl Morey, I'm not surprised it's not attractive to him. Brandon, the only thing left for James is a championship. He's got the MVP, right. He's got the scoring title, got the assist title. He's one of the 30 greatest players in the history of the sport, statistically speaking. But he is not talked about like that because he's been to 1 finals and it was as a 6th man. So no, I'm not surprised that he doesn't want to tie the next 5 years of his career to a team in Houston, Brandon, that he does not know what it's going to look like.
Yeah, and I'm not surprised either. And Nick, some would say he will actually make even more money if he goes to New York and he wins a championship. Like, that is the thinking. You're a legend forever. That you go down in history. So I'm not surprised. And then also, there's nobody left in Houston. The general manager is gone. The head coach is gone. Your wingman wants out. So why would you want to stay there? I think LeBron James totally changed the mindset of the athlete and how we approach business. When LeBron James started controlling his own narrative and he started controlling his journey, everybody started thinking about, wow, what's the best situation for me? And that's what James Harden is doing here. James Harden is looking at this exactly to what you said, Nick, and like, what is the best situation for me? Where can I go and excel, win a championship, and continue to build on my career? So whilst I'm not surprised by this, I don't know if it gets done. I don't know how all this is going to work out. But if it happens, it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, so I think if he goes to Brooklyn, they win the championship. And I've been shocked in the last few days the amount of people saying it doesn't work. And always the sign of if something is going to work or not. And Nick, I know we talk about is like, what does your opponent not want you to do? So you know that's like, hey, Anthony Davis, great news. Kyrie and KD got James Harden. Fantastic. We're going to roll to another championship. Yes, also Taco Tuesday. We just know it's going to happen. We just know they're going to win the championship. The tricky part here is the narrative needs to switch on James Harden if this moves. Because James Harden, to be frank, was viewed as sort of a me-first, selfish player. His usage rate has always been, you know, through the roof. He was 2 last year. Russ was like 4 or 5 last year. So the idea that he can't sort of move the ball, like, don't we want this, Nick, as like the evolution of Harden? The media has been dying for this, like, oh, you can't win this way, you can't win this way. It's like, yeah, I know. That's why I want to move. So I think we're seeing a huge narrative shift around what people think or the one way people think Harden can play.
Well, and Jenna, I know you're going to lead to it, but my question, Wilds, would be, and then I'll kick it to you, Jenna, does James Harden want to change the way he plays, or does James Harden want to change where he plays that way? And I think I think we know he wants a change of scenery. I don't know if we know he wants to change, Jenna, how he plays.
Well, that's just it. So obviously the first thing that comes to mind when you think about a deal like this is how these three personalities are going to mesh. You got James Harden. You just talked about it. His usage rate. You got Kevin Durant. Also likes the ball. You got Kyrie. Also likes the ball. Does it work on the court? Does it work off the court? You know, Nick, I'll send it back to you. What do you think? How do these three personalities mesh?
Well, the personalities is a very tough one to answer because KD is a unique guy unto himself. Kyrie Irving is the definition of, call it mercurial, to be nice. And Harden is a guy who really has not, he's been actually somewhat close guarded into who he is off the court with the media. I think basketball-wise, Brandon, KD and Harden would work great because Durant, one thing he proved in Golden State is the big playoff moments aren't too much for him. He's not afraid of them, and that is where Harden has struggled. I do not see at all how Kyrie Irving fits into this, Brandon, and my guess would be if this does happen and they don't win the title, that Kevin Wildes was so gracious to just hand them as if LeBron James has retired from the league. I mean, it was very nice what Kevin Wildes just did. I think Kyrie Irving, who was supposedly going to be Kevin Durant's wingman, Kyrie Irving would be the one in trade discussions a year from now if this got done and it didn't end in a championship.
Yeah, but Nick, I think it's less about their personalities and more about them on the court and how they ball. When you think about it, and Kevin, you talked about the usage rate and what, is Harden willing to change? Well, at the end of the day, these players are smart. They're some of the smartest, basketball players on the planet. It's not just all physical. So you got to think that they're sitting back having these conversations about how do we sacrifice? And that is the question. Are we willing to sacrifice? Before any of this happens, those three guys have to come together and have that conversation. Now, sometimes you got to save the player from himself because they all think that they can get it done. But when you really look at this, we're looking at today's NBA. We're looking at guys that need to be able to create, guys that need to be able to shoot the ball. All three of those guys do it well. So it comes down to who is going to sacrifice, who's going to be able to play off the ball. So, Kevin, I think this can work if they have real conversations and they sacrifice. But to me, if I'm a player in this situation, I'm looking at how we can potentially win two championships. That's going to force me to look myself in the mirror and say, you know what? Maybe I'm willing to sacrifice some numbers. Maybe I'm willing to sacrifice a couple dollars to get it done.
All right, Wildes, I want to get your take on this. Let's play a little drawing a blank. In the midst of all the craziness last night, Harden posted this video to his Instagram story, uncapping his bottle of water. So many different ways to interpret this. Wildes, Harden's Instagram video is blank.
Great. I mean, I just love this. I just could not love it anymore. The idea that we're like, hey, we're waiting to hear from James Harden. It's like, okay, everyone, how about a riddle? How about an old school, like medieval riddle that you can't figure out? We don't even know what he's referring to. Everyone knows. Everyone knows what this is. I'm not gonna. I have to be like the. Oh my gosh! All right, if it's a cap, it's a lie. If it's no cap, it's the truth. So it's where is he? Is he focusing on the cap? Is he focusing? Is he not focusing on the cap? Is it in reference to wanting to go to Brooklyn? Is it in reference to the $50 million offer? So Nick, first of all, James Harden, who doesn't do a lot of media except for like a Russ happy birthday, just chef's kiss of a riddle of a social media use. Love it.
Brandon, I don't think it's a riddle. Now, Harden might be lying, but I think Harden is calling cap on all of the rumors surrounding him. I think Harden is trying to say, don't believe what you're reading and what you're hearing about me, Brandon. To me, that's very clearly what he's doing here.
Well, I'm sorry. This is less about Harden and more about Jenna. And our production meeting, Jenna's like, is he trying to highlight? Is this his water company?
I have no idea.
So,
But to be fair, in my defense, I never have any
audience
Cap,
of this
no
video.
cap.
Then I thought it was a salary cap situation. I thought it was for
Jenna's
people
not
to
the intended
hydrate more.
audience.
Hydrating is very important if you're a basketball player. The other big story yesterday, guys, the injury to Drew Brees. And where that now leaves the New Orleans Saints, we're going to discuss their quarterback options. One option that Nick likes, one that Nick can't like less. And it makes for great TV. Stick around. We're back after this. First things first.
Of all the things.
If you believe it. Let's head down to New Orleans now. Drew Brees underwent an MRI yesterday after getting hit hard in the chest on Sunday. He's got multiple fractured ribs and a collapsed lung, so he's going to miss some time. Best case scenario, they're saying 2 to 3 weeks. But get this, Sean Payton is waiting before naming a Week 11 starter. Brees posted this pic on the gram. Who Dat Nation, I got the best medical team in the world. Posted this yesterday with his kids. It was adorable. We're going to be back in no time. Okay, Brandon, you suffered this exact injury as a player. So give us a little insight into what Drew Brees is going through right now, what it feels like, and sort of what the sort of prognosis is as a player looking to get back into the game.
Woo. Yeah, first of all, I feel for Drew Brees, even that. He's going to have to do that 4 or 5 times a day just to get the health of that lung back right where it needs to be. So he's going to have 10 reps of 10 to get his lungs back healthy. So he's going to have to continue that. But look, going back in 2014, I had 2 fractured ribs and a punctured lung. And what they had to do is literally while I was woke, because on the way to the hospital, I chugged down the Gatorade, so they couldn't put me to sleep. They end up slicing me open. Well, I'm looking at this and shoving a thick tube in my lung. And for the next 2 to 3 weeks, I was sitting in a chair and I was sleeping in a chair. It was the most uncomfortable thing ever. That's the tube in my lung right there. That's blood at the end of that tube. This is one of the most brutal
Good morning, everybody.
injuries you can have as a player. You can't move. You can't do anything. So, Drew Brees, I feel for you. Yeah, it's brutal. It's brutal wild. It's one of the most uncomfortable things. He's going to have to sleep upright for the next at least week or 2 for him because he didn't have to get the surgeries. It's brutal.
Wow. Well, Brandon, thank you for laying that all out in very detail. That sounds awful. You think? I don't know how else to say it. Well, listen, remember last year Saints lost Drew Brees for 6 weeks. They didn't miss a beat with Teddy Bridgewater in there. So, Nick, let me send it to you. The Saints still make the playoffs with Brees out this time around. If it's 2 to 3 weeks best, if it's 4 to 6 weeks, whatever it is, still puts them back before the playoffs begin.
I say absolutely yes, but first, I'm doubly insulted this segment. First, I'm insulted because of all the things to make fun of me about that are legitimate. Jenna continues to insist on this lie that I'm short. There's nothing wrong with being short, but it's just an odd lie. That's the first reason I'm insulted. The other reason I'm insulted is because you guys, the whole pre-show, were like, hey, we can only ask Brandon what it's like to have cracked ribs and a punctured lung. Even though everyone on the staff knows that I once fell down a set of stairs at a bar and suffered this exact same injury. That's a true story. So y'all could have asked me too, but no, we gotta ask Brandon about it. That's a true story. That did happen.
Short. Can't get up the stairs.
The stairs are too high. Okay, good.
He couldn't see the stairs. He couldn't see them because they were right in front of him.
Now to answer the playoff question, the Saints are gonna be fine. The Saints, this was why beating the Bucs was so wildly important. Because of schedule for the Saints. If you look at their next month of football, they have 2 against the Falcons, Denver, and Atlanta. And then the game after that is Kansas City. Don't even play Drew Brees in the Kansas City game. Rest him until Christmas Day when you play the Minnesota Vikings. You can go 3 and you're going to lose to the Chiefs whether you have Brees or not. Split with the Vikings, beat the Broncos and the Eagles, and you're going to finish the year 12-4. And by the way, in order for that not to be good enough to win the division, the Bucs would have to go undefeated. So I would not play Drew Brees until week 16 at home against Minnesota. I still think if they do that, they'll be 10-4 going into that game because they built themselves a cushion, and they'll be just fine. Now, Brandon, I think their chance of getting the bye has probably been eliminated since there's only one. But not only do I think they'll still make the playoffs, Brandon, I think they'll still win the division.
Yeah, it's possible, Nick. I mean, for those two reasons we talked about yesterday. Coach Payton, he's a genius. No one prepares better than Coach Payton. You can walk in his office at midnight on a Wednesday night, Thursday night, and he'll probably be in there with his candles burning and watching some type of plays from the 1990s, looking at the defensive coordinator, how he set up certain things. So absolutely they have a chance. And then when you look at Dennis Allen the last couple years, his defenses usually trend the second half of the year in the right direction. This team is starting to pick it up. You see what they did against the Bucks. So for those two reasons, they absolutely can continue to right this ship. Now, one of the things we need to pay attention to is Jameis Winston. I don't know about you guys, but I'm excited to watch this kid. The kid has all the skills he needs, but he just needs to protect the ball. So coming in and sitting behind Drew Brees and watching him prepare every single day, how he approaches practice, how he approaches watching film, how he approaches leading, how he approaches game day. What does he dress? How does he dress when he comes to game day? You have to think that is super beneficial for this kid. So Drew Brees and Coach Payton mentoring this kid could be a recipe for success. It has to be. So if Jameis Winston came in with the right attitude, we can see this guy come in and make an impact right away.
Brandon, you missed the best storyline in all of sports. Does LASIK surgery help Jameis Winston become a great quarterback? He had LASIK surgery in the offseason, and everyone's like, hold on. Could this dude just not see that well? Is that going to be the cure to all of his ills? And God bless Sean Payton for trying. Oh, we're out here playing checkers, but Sean Payton's playing chess. Sean Payton's like, I'm not going to name a quarterback. You don't know what I'm up to. Maybe I'm going to play the quarterback that threw for 5,000 yards last year and 30 touchdowns and played the entire second half when Drew Brees went down. Or maybe I'm going to play Taysom Hill, the guy who this year has thrown for, let me check my notes, 186 yards over 9 games. Who knows? Sean Payton. Whoa, the palace intrigue coming out of New Orleans. I'm here for it.
Wild.
Yes.
Do you know what those 186 yards represent that he's thrown for this year? More than half of his career total. And I'm glad you mentioned Taysom Hill because we are now in the second straight year where Drew Brees is going to miss around a month of football, and the Saints are not even considering starting Taysom Hill. So I'll say, Jenna, what I said yesterday once again. No, he's not. 1185 Avenue of the Americas, New York, New York, for all the apologies. For all the apologies for this crap I've taken for 2 years for saying Taysom Hill is a 30-year-old gadget player and not a starting quarterback. Because you know who agrees with me? Sean bleeping Payton, America. He's who agrees with me, Jenna.
Oh, only maybe, since he has yet to name a Week 11 starter. Only maybe. Let us get back to basketball now. Giannis Antetokounmpo should be waking up this morning, a very happy man. A, for what happened yesterday. B, that I pronounced his name perfectly. More moving and shaking in the NBA. It's next. First things first. Welcome back. Talking some hoops now. Milwaukee trying to make good on their promise to Giannis that they'd retool the roster after coming up short again last season. So they've reportedly agreed to deals for Drew Holiday and Bogdanovic as the focus now shifts to Giannis signing his 5-year supermax extension. And with that, we welcome in Broussard. But Nick, I want to start with you. Is adding Holiday and Bogdanovic enough for Giannis to stay, sign that supermax there?
Well, I told Broussard this off the air yesterday, and good to see you, Chris, that what I was hearing is that Milwaukee and the league believes that Giannis is going to sign the supermax when offered. And to me, this move is just further confirmation of it. Because they gave up, pick-wise, what the Lakers gave up for Anthony Davis. They gave up 3 firsts and 2 swaps for Drew Holiday. There is no chance you do that, Broussard, unless you are fully confident that Giannis is going to stay there. Because if Giannis were to leave, then those picks become super valuable. So I didn't want to go on television yesterday and say that I was hearing Giannis is going to sign the Supermax, but I'll do it today because now there's further confirmation. Giannis, I believe, and I've been told the league believes, is not only strongly leaning towards, but is all but decided to sign that Supermax in Milwaukee. I think the Bucks know that, Chris, which is why they were okay laying out this type of future risk to sign Holiday, who, by the way, is on an expiring contract. Where if Giannis were to leave, Holiday could also leave, and the Bucks would be totally ruined. So I think Giannis is staying, and whether it's enough or not for them to win a title, we can discuss. But Broussard, I'm hearing he's staying, and I believe he's staying.
No, I hear you with these moves. It certainly makes sense. And Giannis has always said that he wants to stay in Milwaukee, that he loves it there. Here's what I say. If he really wants to be there and he's happy, then by all means sign, and I will applaud you for doing what makes you happy. But if there is an inkling of doubt in his mind, if there is a thought of, maybe this doesn't work out and I need to go somewhere where I can win a championship, then don't sign. This is not about, don't worry about will it be a distraction for this entire season. It won't. LeBron James played twice on the last year of a contract, Cleveland and Miami, without it being a distraction. Kawhi Leonard played in Toronto without it being a distraction on the last year of a deal, and by the way, won a championship. Kyrie Irving did it in Boston, and that wasn't the main distraction. If you come out and your team plays well, and you play and you show, Kyrie was a distraction for other reasons, not because it was the last year of his deal. But if Giannis comes out and plays like his heart is all in this season, winning a championship, even though he's in the last year of his deal, it won't be a distraction. And by the way, first practice of the regular season, you say, look, I'm not talking about this. I am trying to win a championship. I love it here in Milwaukee. I love the moves we made. I am all in. And then shut it down and it's over.
But Broussard, can they win a title this year? I mean, is this a title team with the reported additions of Holiday and Bogdanovic? Is it enough to go all the way?
They improved, there's no question. They can win a championship, but this is not the type of major blockbuster move that makes you go, oh, they're the definite favorites. No, look, I like what both guys had. Drew is arguably the best defensive guard in the league. Bogdanovic can shoot it, can go off the dribble. He's tough. Here's a question mark. Mike Budenholzer. And I like Bud as a coach. I've voted for him as coach of the year before. However, he's been the #1 seed 3 times and yet never been to the finals. Atlanta 60 wins, swept by LeBron in Cleveland. We get that. But Milwaukee, you lose to Toronto 4 straight games in the playoffs. And then last year was a flat-out embarrassment against the 5th-seeded Miami Heat. So let's see what Bud is made of come playoff time. But they got a chance. They can win it all. But I am not picking. You can't pick them just based on this move.
Yeah. I mean, no, they cannot win a championship. I mean, adding second-tier players and thinking that you're going to get it done is not going to happen. And it's because of Giannis, not because of Drew Holiday. Drew is he's a really good player, as we all know, respected in the league. This dude can shut down any type of guard. He's great at adjusting and being able to adapt to any situation, any team he's on. So for that reason, yes, they got better. But at the end of the day, this is about Giannis. Giannis, in today's NBA, you got to be able to shoot. He can't shoot. He can't create once his first option is taken away from him. If he can develop, then we can have this conversation. So this is less about who they're adding and more about the development of Giannis for me, because this guy, he's a beast, but he doesn't have the type of game that can literally win a championship. And that's what you see when you look at the last couple years from LeBron James, Steph Curry, Kevin Durant. Like, those guys are just different.
So, Brandon, I'm going to disagree. I think this is the perfect move for them. Because when you could shut down Giannis, we looked around in the bubble and it's like, I don't know, it's really Chris Middleton, and then you start to get a little bit sparse. You're like, all right, Dante, Villanova time for you, buddy. Okay, George Hill, turn back the clock, time for you. Let's see something. And it just never happened. To me, Broussard, this is the opposite of like the Harden to Brooklyn move. This isn't like coming in and putting a huge piece. This is just coming in and putting like nice complementary pieces. And Nick, I'll throw it to you. You know that I love the point differential that the Bucks had all this year. If Budenholzer decides to sort of like pump up Giannis's minutes, which I know you have been preaching, give Giannis some more minutes, start to prepare them for the playoffs. I think they're very dangerous.
So I agree with you, Wilds, Brandon, but I think Brandon had it exactly right, but I disagree with the conclusion. I think Brandon was 100% correct that this is about Giannis, but the conclusion that because it's about Giannis, they can't win the title, I disagree with entirely. And here's what I mean. Giannis is 25 years old. He is not, it's unbelievable. It's true. Look it up. He's not done improving. He is going to get better. The key for Milwaukee, though, is not the addition of Drew Holiday and Bogdanovic, even though I like those and it makes them better. The key is to remove the sentence Wilds uttered. When Giannis gets shut down, who else can make shots? Do you know what the best players on championship teams do? They never get shut down. LeBron hadn't been shut down in a playoff series in a decade. Durant does not get shut down in playoff series, right?
So that's fair.
Like the best guys in the league don't get shut down in playoff series. That's the key for Giannis. Giannis has to evolve. He must improve. He must learn some type of mid-range threat. That's the key to Milwaukee. And so I agree with Brandon that as presently constituted, if Giannis is the same player, it doesn't matter adding Drew Holiday and Bogdanovic. But I think if Giannis can evolve, Brandon, which I think at 25 years old we should expect him to evolve, then Milwaukee absolutely has the pieces around him to win a championship.
Yeah, it's a big challenge.
Well,
Chris,
you mentioned.
I mean, Tell me if I'm wrong here.
Go ahead, Brandon.
Developing, we've seen people get better as far as on the perimeter and shooting the ball. But we talk about being able to beat guys off the dribble. He can do that, but when that first option is taken away from him, what does he have? I don't know. You maybe tell me over the last 10 years what guy improved when they were driving to the basket. Now, I think guys are more efficient. They learn how to be more efficient dribbling the ball or being able to be more effective. But as far as like just thinking this guy's going to come in and develop off the dribble, I just don't see that happening. Now, will his shot develop? Absolutely. But he's missing a huge part of a game, and that's being able to get to the basket anytime he wants. You got to have 2, 3, 4 different options in your toolbox.
Right. All right. Well, the
what
Bucks
he
weren't
can
the only
also
teams making
do
moves
is-
yesterday. We're going to get back to this in a second. Hang on, Broussard. Phoenix agreeing to a deal with OKC to get Chris Paul. The Suns, member, the darlings of the bubble, going 8-0. They now add a veteran star alongside their young core of Devin Booker and DeAndre Ayton. Broussard, what's the ceiling for the Suns after they add CP3?
The ceiling would be a 5th seed because they're not going to be better than the Lakers, the Clippers, the Warriors, or the Nuggets. There's no way they'll be better than those 4 teams. So 5th seed is an absolute ceiling. But here's the thing. There's no guarantee they're going to make the playoffs. I like them a lot. I think they have a good chance to make the playoffs. But Dallas is in if they stay healthy. Utah is in. That's 6 teams right there. And so they're going to battle with Portland and New Orleans and San Antonio and these other teams out west. It's tough, not to mention Memphis. But I like the move for them. Chris Paul brings winning pedigree, winning mentality, and he will help Devin Booker become a superstar or grow toward that, and DeAndre Ayton become an all-star caliber player without stepping on their toes. That's the thing. A lot of superstars would go in there have the ball all the time, and take away from Booker and Ayton. Chris Paul won't do that.
So this is, first of all, I think Presti did CP3 a solid because I think they could have gotten more for Chris Paul than what the Suns gave up, at least slightly more. I think Chris Paul, though, didn't mind going to Phoenix, liked the idea of it, and so we put him there, and the Thunder got a decent return for him. But prior to this move, I think the Suns were vastly overrated by the general public because of the 8-0 stretch in the bubble. Prior to this move, they were not a playoff team. Not in the West. The West only has right now one great team, but it has a bunch of very good teams, and the Suns weren't going to find their way through there. Now I do believe they're a playoff team, first of all. Second of all, the development of their two young pieces is the reason you make this move, Brandon. Everyone's going to focus on Booker, and I get it. Booker's a great scorer who needs to learn how to win. But the other piece is Ayton. The Phoenix Suns drafted DeAndre Ayton instead of Trae Young. The Phoenix Suns drafted DeAndre Ayton instead of Luka Doncic. That's obviously going to be a mistake, but you want to minimize how much of a mistake that is by turning him into one of the best centers in the league, where all of a sudden big men matter, with Anthony Davis, with Jokic, with Embiid if the Sixers get it together. And you could not pair him with a better floor general than Chris Paul. So for the future of the Suns, I like the move. And for the present, the Suns making the playoffs for the first time in damn near a generation, I think it would be great for them, Brandon.
A generation.
Yeah. I mean,
up.
they'll make the playoffs in the first time in 10 years, like you just said, Nick. But why does this make sense for Chris Paul? With everything you and Chris just said, why does this make sense for a 35-year-old dude? Like, why? Like, this dude is coming in, and he'll make this a more attractive destination for free agency. This is, to me, is like a bridge for the Phoenix Suns. Great for the Phoenix Suns. Awesome. But for Chris Paul's Wilds, it makes no sense for me, because this dude knows he's not going to come in and win a championship. So I don't get this move for Chris Paul, but I definitely understand it for the Suns.
I think it's a great question. That's what I was trying to wrestle with, is I wanted Chris Paul to get a ring. I want him to go to Milwaukee and get a ring and have it be like the final cherry on top of his career Sunday. Then I thought about it. I was like, you know what? Chris Paul's legacy is going to be like an investor in Shark Tank, like Mr. Wonderful. He invests time and makes you relevant. New Orleans was 18-64. They draft Chris Paul. They go to the playoffs. The Clippers was the worst franchise in not just basketball, but they're in the running for the worst franchise in all sports. Chris Paul comes, boom, Lob City. We're back to being relevant. He goes to the Rockets. That one's a kind of a weird one. That doesn't fit with my, strategy here. Then he goes to the Thunder, like, we're tanking. It's not. We're not doing anything. Like, nope. They're good. They get up into the playoffs. They make some real noise. Now, Broussard, I would say that the ceiling for the Suns is to win a championship. It's obviously not next year, but if they ever have like uber success, I think they'll be able to point the finger at Chris Paul and say, you know what? It started here. This was what really took us to the next level.
Wilds, that's cute. That's a really cute story. I'd rather have Isaiah Thomas and Steph Curry's legacy. I mean, come on. Really?
Let's take a turn now. We got to head back to the NFL. Hey, guys, what made Andy Reid so angry this season? As one media member put it, the most irate they've ever seen him. We'll tell you next. First things first. Tonight, don't miss the action from TSN Elite Professional Football Development League, featuring some of the biggest names from the top college programs in the country. It all starts at 7 Eastern tonight on FS1 and the Fox Sports app. All right, let's talk some Andy Reid. One of the nicest people you will ever meet. I know that. I covered him for years. So what made him blow his temper a few weeks back? Well, the Chiefs had just one loss this season. They fell to the Raiders back in Week 5. It was a bad loss. After the game, the Raiders team buses apparently took a victory lap around Arrowhead, and that didn't sit well with Andy, who talked about the stunt ahead of Sunday's rematch.
Well, listen, they won the game, so they can do anything they want to do. They end up winning the game. That's not our style, but we'll get ourselves back, ready to play, and that's where we're at.
I mean, you can find a smart aleck bus driver in Kansas City who made some snide comments when we got on the bus. Maybe that's why we drove around the stadiums, to tick him off. This is ridiculous. Next question.
Nick,
I love it.
will the Raiders regret this on Sunday?
Yeah, they will. And I'm so excited. Here's some fun facts. Do you know Patrick Mahomes' favorite team to play? The Raiders. Doesn't matter if they're Oakland, Vegas, Los Angeles, if they ever go back there, it's the Raiders. What team does he have the most touchdowns against? The Raiders. What team does he have the most wins against? It's the Raiders. Or second most wins, pardon me. What team does he have the most yards against, most rushing touchdowns? It's the Raiders. Beat him by 31 last year, beat him by 32 the year before Mahomes even took over. He's owned this, Mahomes' first year beat him by 32. He's owned this team. And now the Chiefs, who all year long have been searching for what? Motivation. Because they're so much better than everybody, now have it. It's not only, Brandon, the team that beat them, but a team that evidently tried to, rub it in their face. You're going to take a loop around Arrowhead Stadium? Let me tell you, it's not to see the sights. Do you know what's outside of Arrowhead Stadium? A lonely Taco Bell and a Drury Inn. It's in the middle of Raytown, Missouri. It is not a great scenic area. The only reason you're taking that lap around Arrowhead is to rub it in the Chiefs' face. And now you're going to get 3.5 hours of punishment Sunday afternoon in that sparkling stadium in Las Vegas. I can't wait for it, Brandon.
Okay. Brandon, I've got so many questions because I've never been on the NFL bus, although I did like Jerome Bettis. Just, can you take me into this of like you leave the stadium and then you get on the bus and you're allowed to instruct the bus driver to take a loop, or is it like speed where the bus driver has to keep going no matter what? Can you just sort of take me into how this wonderful story may have happened?
Well, the team has total control over, the bus and all operations. So you can tell the bus driver to do whatever you want. Here's another cool fact right here. When you get on the bus, whether you are traveling, to your home stadium, or if you land in a new city and you're traveling to the hotel or their stadium, the bus drivers have on your hat. The team literally makes all bus drivers, all staff put on your team's gear because they don't want this interaction. This is problematic. Yeah. So to me, it's less about the Chiefs and more about Coach Gruden in this situation with the bus driver. This is funny. This is classic John Gruden. I can see him doing this. This was awesome. I would have done it too. If I get on the bus driver has on our New York Jets logo hat, and he's like, oh, you guys are going to get crushed. I mean, it could have been a big problem for me. But after the game, I'm definitely telling that bus driver to take a few laps. Absolutely. I get it. This is less about the Chiefs, Nick.
Don't have to raise your hand, Wiles.
No, just for the record, Brandon, I think you need a different example because I think that still does happen with even bus drivers who are Jets fans. When the Jets get on the bus drivers say, like, oh, instead of saying you guys are going to get crushed, say, we collectively, if you ever talk to our producer, Sam Pepper, he's like, well, we're going to get crushed. So, Nick, I'll throw it to you. Yeah. You guys did lose this game. I know you want to, puff your chest out and be like, the undefeated Chiefs. And then until you look at the record, you guys do have a loss here. John Gruden did figure you out and take a big loop. You're not worried at all.
No. Now, I will say this. Some concerning news yesterday. All of the Chiefs tackles, the whole tackle room is on the COVID list. Not because any of them necessarily have it, but because of close contacts. If for some reason they're without all of their tackles, then I don't even know if I'd play Mahomes. I might just punt the game because you don't want your quarterback to get hurt when you're clearly going to win the Super Bowl. But assuming those guys come back the way Roethlisberger came back, he was on the COVID list until Saturday, got cleared. They could still be eligible. If the Eric Fisher and Mitchell Schwartz and the backup tackle are all able to come off that list, the Chiefs are going to win this game by 25 points. Like, no. I'm not concerned. It was a good moment for the Raiders. I'm happy for them. They got a great, it was their crowning achievement of the entire Gruden era, Brandon, was that victory lap around Arrowhead, and it's going to carry them all the way to what might be a wild card annihilation.
What are we going to see? So what are we
going
to see?
38-13.
Because they drove around the state. Because they drove around the state, and we're going to see Patrick Mahomes doing more no-look passes. Is he going to throw underhand throws because they drove around the stadium? Like, is that what we're going to see because John Gruden got into it with a bus driver? You think that's what's going to happen? No. The Oakland Raiders gave the entire NFL the blueprint on how to slow down your team.
How's that blueprint worked since then?
Goes back
How's
to
it worked since then?
Listen. They're balling. They're balling, but at the end of the day, they had to adjust.
Yeah.
They had to adjust. But they lost against the Oakland Raiders. So this is going to be must-see TV because they know how to beat the Chiefs, Nick.
Yeah. If it's must-see, Jenna, tune into the first half so you can actually see a game that's not a 30 ball. Because it's going to get ugly late.
Fun, adorable little rematch Sunday out in Vegas. Hey, why do you think Kevin Durant might not want this James Harden deal to the Nets to happen? We'll tell you next. First things first.
Did he have an Achilles?
Back to the bombshell report that broke last night. James Harden turning down a 2-year, $103 million deal from the Rockets, reportedly making his message clear. He wants out and he'd like to go to Brooklyn. The Rockets and Nets have reportedly been in contact, but so far to no avail. Nick, there's a lot of different angles here, but let's start with this one. The Nets, who would be the receiving end of James Harden. You talk about Kevin Durant. You think Kevin Durant wants this deal to happen?
Oh, I think KD clearly wants it to happen, but I'm a little surprised that he would be so eager for it to happen before seeing what this team is presently constituted with some tweaking would look like. Because what do we know about Kevin Durant? He is acutely and intensely aware of the narrative surrounding him, and he really cares about it. This isn't speculation. We know Durant is bothered by the fact that after winning 2 finals MVPs and 2 championships against LeBron, that nobody in their right mind elevated him ahead of LeBron. That those championships count, but they come with the but of the Warriors. And I think one of the reasons a lot of us thought he picked Brooklyn was because if he were able to win a championship in Brooklyn, along with Kyrie as his wingman, there would be no buts whatsoever. And so if you're Durant, who has 1 MVP, 3 second-place finishes, 6 first-team All-NBAs, and you add a guy who has 1 MVP, 3 second-place finishes, and 6 first-team All-NBAs, before you even play a game with Brooklyn, to where once again there's questions about, okay, are you the best player on this team? You have another MVP alongside you. It's surprising to me, Broussard, that this is something he would sign up for before seeing if Brooklyn can win the title with Kyrie and the supporting cast around him.
Well, there's a lot to address there. Number one, Kevin Durant would definitely be the best player on the team. As great as James Harden is, Kevin Durant is better. I do agree with you that if I was in Durant's shoes with that cast of really talented role players in Brooklyn around him and Kyrie, with a first-year coach in Steve Nash, I would kind of want to see what we look like without James Harden and see how it works. Now, to your point about legacy, look, Durant's not in the GOAT conversation and never will be, as great as he is. Could he get into a top 5 all time? Maybe, but he could certainly climb towards that. And the way he climbs, for him to climb toward the top 5, the guys he can pass them with this stacked team. I know your thought is, well, this team is so stacked that if somehow Brooklyn won it, people wouldn't give KD the credit. But here's the thing. LeBron James was trying to add Kawhi Leonard to Anthony Davis in him last year. And no one was saying this. LeBron has never won it without a super team. And yes, Kyrie Irving and Kevin Love were a super team with LeBron. They weren't as good as Golden State, even though they came back and beat them.
But real quick, Broussard, he's won them all without another league MVP alongside him. There is a difference.
Okay.
And when we're talking about the greatest
hold on,
players ever, when we're talking about the greatest players ever, all of them had an all-star alongside them, except for Hakeem in his first title. None of them, I shouldn't say none, very few of them had other league MVPs alongside them, Brandon, which is the distinction here. And that would make this an anomalous situation, Brandon.
Yeah, I mean, we can throw titles and numbers at these conversations all we want, but the reality is none of these guys, whether it was Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, Shaquille O'Neal, Dwayne Wade, LeBron James, Steph Curry, Kevin Durant, none of these guys did it alone. All those guys did it on super teams. So however you want to cut it, they did it on super teams. And if Kevin Durant play into this narrative, then we're showing how weak his ego really is. He should absolutely want this, because at the end of the day, the ultimate goal is to win a championship. Now, if he wants to go be the best of all time, if he's trying to continue down that path, then he's lying to himself. This is a good situation for Kevin Durant. The biggest thing, and you said this earlier, Nick, is really Kyrie. Like, how does Kyrie fit into all of this? He's the one that's going to have to figure out what he's going to have to sacrifice. I love this situation if they can get it done, but you will have to think all three of those guys are going to have to sit down at the table and have a real conversation around how do we get this done together and what do we have to sacrifice, Kevin?
Hey, Broussard, I'm going to throw a different wrinkle at you. And I know we're talking about Kevin Durant's legacy, and I think when we think about this team, we see all three guys on the floor at the same time, who gets the last shot, and there seems to be a little bit of friction there. But doesn't this team need more depth than any other super team ever? Kevin Durant's coming off an Achilles injury. We haven't seen him in 18 months play competitive basketball. John Wall had an Achilles injury, and he's dunking on Michael Beasley. I haven't seen that video of Kevin Durant. I've seen him taking jump shots against a coach the size of Nick Wright, but that doesn't make me think that Kevin Durant is full speed Kevin Durant. The other thing is Kyrie. Kyrie is not this Iron Man player. Kyrie missed 111 of 492 games with the Cavs. He missed 37 of 164 games with the Celtics, and he played 20 games last year. The idea that Kyrie and Kevin Durant are going to be full strength for the whole year, I think people are just giving them a little bit too much credit, especially on a compact year with probably more back-to-backs and less rest, Broussard.
Well, they do have good depth, though. I mean, Spencer Dinwiddie, Karis LeVert, Jared Allen. If Joe Harris is there, they've got some.
You'd be trading those guys for Harden.
Well, if you give them up for Harden, but I'm saying right now, I think Wilds was saying Harden adds to their depth, which certainly he does. But I don't think depth is a big issue. I think Durant will be fine. I think the 18 months off will actually help him be that much better from the Achilles when he comes back. You're right about Kyrie. There's no question he is injury prone. Let me say this to Nick, though, about the legacy thing. Magic played with Kareem. They both obviously were MVPs. Magic never won a championship without at least two Hall of Famers playing with him. Bird never won it without at least 3 Hall of Fame teammates. We need to stop saying Broussard, there is a distinction. I gave you Magic and Kareem, and they're both in the top 5 of everybody's all-time list.
Of course. Let's talk about this, okay? Because Kevin Durant really, truly, and we know it, cares about legacy. Nearly a decade ago, he did the great Sports Illustrated cover and interview. I'm sick of coming in second in my high school class, second in the draft, second in MVP. We know it from the burner accounts. We know it from the podcasts and the interviews. He cares about this stuff. You talked about how high he can climb on the all-time pyramid, all right? Let's just look at the last 50 years. Forget the Russell and Wilt and Cousy. Throw those guys out. The last 50 years, right now, he's outside of the top 10. He's right on the cusp of the last 50 years. And what all of the guys in front, I'll give you the list in a second. What all of the guys in front of him have in common, with the exception of the Kareem Magic component, is they won titles, yes, on great teams, but without another Pantheon player alongside them. LeBron has his titles. He's number 1. There's not another MVP he's played with. Jordan's 2. There's not another MVP he's played with. Kareem is 3. Now, think about it. Hold on. He won his titles. What?
Exactly.
What? Oh, the LeBron Jordan thing. Sorry. Kareem and Magic are 3 and 4. And what certainly helps Magic is it's not like he won all his titles when Kareem was still a great player. Kareem was on the team, but for titles 4 and 5 for Magic, Kareem was no longer a great player. He was averaging 14 points a game in one of them. Duncan is number 5. Duncan had great teammates, not an MVP. Kobe is 6. You know what's really important to Kobe? The titles without Shaq. You have Shaq, you have Akeem, you have Bird. They all won titles without another MVP alongside them. Then you've got Moses and Dr. J who did it together, and then Kevin Durant. He's trying to move up that list. A title with Kyrie and this Nets team, you start saying Durant or Larry Bird, it's a real question. A title with Kyrie and Harden, I'm not even saying it'd be fair, but there is going to be some equivocation on it the way there was with the Warriors. I don't think that can be ignored or denied, just like if, Broussard, would this title for the Lakers have meant as much for LeBron if Kawhi had signed with them? If they had gotten Kawhi, would it have meant as much for LeBron?
But that didn't stop him from trying. But that didn't stop him from trying. I agree with you on that one. I mean, he's in the debate with Jordan. That would have hurt him in the debate with Jordan. In the debate with Jordan, a lot of times you bring up that LeBron has custom-made these teams to win championships, whereas Michael Jordan just took what he had. Whatever we got, I'm taking that and winning with it. And I don't want to get into the big Jordan LeBron thing, but I'm just saying that is an argument in that debate. I hear you, but the first 6, I think it was 6 guys, up to Kobe, they're just better than Durant. I mean, it's not just because of they didn't have an MVP on their championship teams. Kobe, Duncan, LeBron, the guys you mentioned are just better. Better two-way players. Better than Durant. After that, Moses and Dr. J certainly arguable. Bird, you might have ahead of Durant right now. But the guys that Durant can realistically pass, having a James Harden and a Kyrie Irving is not going to affect that argument. And let me say this, Nick. This is important. This is important. This is not nearly as ready-made as Golden State was. Because you and I both, well as a lot of other analysts, have questions about this team. If he could make this work with Harden and Kyrie, I actually think that's a feather in his cap, because when you look at it, you say, my goodness, they're all great individually, but does this work together? So there's a lot of question marks here that didn't exist with Golden State. Yeah.
No question about it.
Chris Broussard, thank you so much. As always, we got to get back to the NFL now. Our friends at Fox Bet still have the Eagles as favorites to win the NFC East, but look out. The Fighting Joe Judges hot on their heels, and Brandon Marshall nailed his Giants upset pick last week. Take a listen to this.
Eagles at the Giants. I'll say this. To me, this is the division. Whoever wins it, they're winning division.
Wow.
And you look at the schedule, the remaining schedule. So I'm going to go with the Giants. Phil, who do you have?
You know, Brandon, it really is a good point by you, but I'm taking Philadelphia just because of their defensive front. They got Carson Wentz. So if the game comes down to he has the ball last, he gets 4 downs, he'll get it done.
You know what? I'm going to stay with Brandon right here. I'm going to go with the Giants. I think the Giants are starting to pick up a little bit of steam, and I think the Giants has a good chance of winning.
The last couple of weeks, they've been sneaky good.
Former world champs Javier Fortuna taking on Antonio Lozada Saturday, 7 Eastern, 4 Pacific, only on FS1 and the Fox Sports app. All right, back to our top story this morning. The bombshell report that broke last night. James Harden turning down a 2-year, $103 million deal from the Rockets, reportedly making his message clear. He wants out, and he'd like to go to Brooklyn. Wilds, I'm going to say it again. Houston, you got a problem. The Rockets and Nets have reportedly been in contact, but so far to no avail. Wrote it. I made it up. Nick, how do you see the personalities of Harden, Durant, and Kyrie all meshing?
I think the personalities are something of an unknown. I'll be honest, I'm not sure how Durant and Kyrie's personalities are going to match on the court, because Kyrie is, let's just say Kyrie and KD are both very unique guys, and Harden is probably the more reserved of the three, but I think it's less about personalities and more about playing styles. Now, I understand the argument of you've got in KD and Harden, two of the 5 best players in the world. If KD's healthy, he's the 2nd best player, and Harden's proven himself to be the 4th or the 5th best player. So I get why those two guys would want to come together. My question is, where does this leave Kyrie Irving? Because when you look at other big threes that have been built, that third guy has always had a very defined role, either of defensive stopper, a la, and kind of muck up the, no, I don't want to say muck up the game, but do the hard things like Draymond or Rodman or even Klay Thompson, which is spot up shooter plus defensive stopper. Kevin Love got minimized as a third man. Chris Bosh excelled as a defensive player and spot up shooter, but he was minimized. How does this leave Kyrie Irving, who obviously is not a defensive stopper and is best doing what we're seeing right now, having the ball in his hands, doing marvelous things with it, as the guy who I believe to be the single best ball handler in NBA history? So I get why Durant would want this as far as having another great player alongside him. And I get why Harden would want it, because Houston, it's basically over there, it would appear. I'm not sure how Kyrie would feel about this, Brandon. And if this were to happen, I'm not sure how long Kyrie would be for the Nets unless they win the title immediately.
Yeah, I'm with you on this one, Nick. I mean, it comes down to the game and less about the personalities, because in the locker room, we're used to that. Going back to Little League, you're used to playing with people from all different types of neighborhoods and have different type of personalities.
Sure.
Their parents are different, so you're used to that. This comes down to, can we get it done on the court? And are we willing to sacrifice? Two things never change in sports, in any locker room: accountability and sacrifice. And you have to think that these guys will have to sit down the same way LeBron James, D. Wade, and Bosh did to figure out, how are we going to sacrifice? How are we going to get this done? And Nick, another good example, you mentioned them, but Klay Thompson, right? Like, he was a guy that had to sacrifice as well, but they found the way. So they have to sit down and figure out what's more important to them. I think they can get it done. You know, we're talking about some of the smartest basketball players that walk the earth. They made it to this level, so their IQ is out of this world. So for them to sit down and have a conversation, they'll figure it out, Wilds.
Yeah, I totally agree. Nick, I think the pendulum of like analyzing this trade and would it work and could we share the ball, the pendulum has swung way too far to over analysis. You know what? Here's what it all boils down to. I don't know. Too much talent. Too much talent. We couldn't win. Too much talent. What was our Achilles heel besides Durant's actual Achilles? Too much talent. We're too good for our own good. Why can't I get the job? You know what? I work too hard. I'm too nice of a guy. It's a nonsense take, and you look through the NBA, that's never been a story. We talked about it, like, I guess the Karl Malone Lakers, I think Karl Malone was a little washed. Broussard brought up, like, the old washed Rockets with Barkley. Like, that didn't really work. The 2004 Olympic team, which actually wasn't as good as, like, the 2003, like, FIBA team. So, like, just the great pieces. If you have the best players, you win. It's not that hard. And I know that Harden's usage rate was off the chart. So, like, did we think the Rockets won? Did we think that the Rockets were going to work? Because Harden's usage rate was number 2 in the league, and Westbrook was like 5, and they played just fine. If they could get a few rebounds, they'd probably be fine. So, Nick, I'm just not buying at all that there's too much talent on the team.
Well, it wouldn't so much, again, I think this team would be really good. It's not so much that there'd be too much talent. It'd be, is there too much duplication? So I'm going to use a football example. Right now, I know it's past the NFL trade deadline, but just stick with me here. If the Chiefs could acquire DK Metcalf, you'd be like, yeah, they definitely should do that. It'd be unbelievable. But if instead of acquiring DK Metcalf, they could acquire a really good corner and a decent safety, that's probably better, because the DK Metcalf role is already handled there, right? The James Harden isolation score, three-point shooting role is handled in Brooklyn. Now, again, you can say the Kevin Durant situation, they had all that handled in Golden State, but Golden State had just lost because LeBron was solving them in the finals. My bigger question, again, is about Kyrie. Kyrie was in an amazing basketball situation in Cleveland. They had won the title. The next year, they were even better, and they ran into Durant's Warriors. And he had 2 years left on his deal. He said, I don't want this. I don't want to be little brother anymore. Well, now you're about to be the third child. Not the little brother, but you're going to have two big brothers. So it would be surprising. I don't think Kyrie is going to say, guys, guess what? I'm not going to be energy off the bench. He's certainly not going to be a guy that says, I'm going to put all my effort to defense. He wants the ball in his hands and to cook. And so we know why Harden would want this, Brandon. I think we know why KD would want it. The Kyrie thing to me is really interesting. And I'm not certain about how this all would land with him.
Yeah, I want to go back to your comment, your football analogy. That was a good one. I think you're right there. And then there's also people internally right now that don't think that this is the best thing for the Nets. They actually think someone like a DeMar DeRozan would be a better fit for them. They feel like they have almost everything that they need. This could come in and be too disruptive. So, look, I'm not an insider. I don't have sources, but I spent 3 years in Brooklyn when I played for the Jets and Giants. So there are some people that I built relationships with, and that's how some people are thinking internally. So, Nick, you're dead on there. There's so much to this, on the court, and also in that locker room.
All right, well, let's talk about this, guys, from Kevin Durant's standpoint. We just brushed upon it. He took a lot of heat, remember, for joining the Warriors after they already won a title with MVP Steph Curry. And as we all know, Harden also already has an MVP. Nick, should Kevin Durant even want this move, Harden coming in?
In theory, because of what Wild said, get as much talent as possible, the answer is yes. But I think it's a little more nuanced than that, and so I'm going to describe a player. This player's got 1 league MVP, 3 second-place finishes, has been first-team All-NBA 6 times, and has a combined 4 scoring and assist titles. That player is Kevin Durant. That player is also James Harden. They have, regular season-wise, nearly identical resumes. Now, obviously, what Durant has that Harden doesn't is pelts on the wall as far as championships and great playoff performances. But Wilds, if Durant just wanted the best team around him, why didn't he re-sign in Golden State? If it wasn't about proving something new, I can do it as the unquestioned guy, wouldn't he have stayed in Golden State? So I get going to Brooklyn, where you have a clear number 2 in Kyrie, but before you even play a game there, adding another MVP, another top 5 player, to me, if you were going to do that, you could add Steph and Clay, and instead you want Harden and Kyrie. It strikes me as odd, Wilds.
So I'll throw it back to you with this question. LeBron gets a ton of credit not only for his performance on the court, but also for building those teams. Sort of built the Heat, definitely built this Lakers team. I would say that Durant looks at this like, all right, I went into a ready-made system in Golden State, but I'm sort of like one of the architects, from the coach to the players to DeAndre Jordan.
Maybe that's it.
I think there's probably...
And maybe that's it.
Go ahead.
No. Maybe that's it. Maybe Brandon, he feels like I picked the coach, Kyrie came with me, now I'm getting Harden here. And maybe that's the answer. It just seems like if you wanted the ultimate MVP, selfless player around you, you had it in Steph, and you left Steph.
Yeah, but let's go back though. The Draymond Green situation. That's what that came down to. What it seemed like. You know, Draymond Green and him just didn't match. That's why he felt unappreciated because of that situation. But then go back to 2015, 2016 season. What happened? The reason why the energy was different is because as a competitor, every athlete was looking at Kevin Durant like, how do you lose to these guys and then go join them? And I think that that was a big problem. So now going to the Nets and trying to do it his own way and adding to Harden, the energy around this move is totally different than him getting beat by the Warriors and then join them. When you had the series won, they should have won it. They should have been in the finals. That was their year to win it.
No, I think I think it's a great point. It would not be going to the team you were up 3-1 on that had already won a title and then teaming up with them. But it wouldn't be quite as clean as I thought Durant was planning for. Go to a team with no history whatsoever, bring a wingman with me, the same wingman that LeBron won a title with, and win the title as the unquestioned superstar on a good but not ready-made super team. Bring in Harden, Jenna, muddies those waters a bit. But by the way, I don't think this is actually going to happen.